Welcome back. This is Boomer Life on CIL 650.
Welcome back to Boomer Life here on CIL 650. Our guests from Neurokinetics Clinic in Vancouver are in studio with us today. They are the president and founder, Dr. Philippe Silvestre, along with Sonia Dale, the clinic manager, and also to my left, J.C. Gordon, director of liaison and logistics. Of course, it's radio. They can't tell, can they, J.C.? We're talking on the program today about trauma impact and disconnect. And Dr. Philippe has done an excellent job of describing what that is, and especially the disconnect thing, JC. And that's a phenomenon that I don't think, unless you've experienced it personally, when you have some sort of traumatic event in your life that causes your brain to begin strategies for coping and just getting on as best you can, which causes you literally to disconnect from the whole wide world. Unless you've been through that, it's a tough one to relate to, isn't it?
It really is. And Sterling, the unfortunate part of the disconnect aspect of this whole phenomenon is it is something that is not addressed out there.
Right.
It is something that the medical community has not been able to put the finger on and say, oh, we know how to help you.
Right.
They just haven't.
Doug is on the line. Doug is a business professional from here in Vancouver and a patient, or at least a former patient, of Neurokinetics Clinic. Doug, thank you for joining us, sir.
You're very welcome.
What first brought you to Neurokinetics, Doug, and how did you find out about it?
Well, I found out about Neurokinetics because Philippe knows how to fly. A close friend of mine is also a flyer, and a close friend of mine is also, a business coach and interested in personal development and things of that sort. So,
right.
He knew about what Philippe did. He understood it reasonably well and that kind of thing. And I had been talking with him about the difficulties I was having with, what you're calling disconnection.
Right.
I had previously been to Dr. Swingle's clinic here in Vancouver and did some I think they call it neurofeedback, and got some benefit there. And then I went to Daniel Amen's clinic in California, where they use brain scans, and their primary diagnosis was what they called an ADHD-like phenomenon.
Okay.
And they diagnosed also that I had some kind of damage to my temporal lobes of my brain, which they speculated had happened at birth. That the doctor may have used forceps to pull me out, if there's a difficult birth.
Right, yes.
And placed forceps, and I decided, basically put your head in a kind of a grip and pull you through.
That's true.
And my sister confirmed that my mother had told her that I'd had that. And anyway, I was really finding myself disconnected. The real problem was making my business cohere. I was capable of doing really brilliant work on specific projects and that kind of stuff, but having it actually hang together was defeating me, and I felt disconnected from other people, and the whole thing was mysterious to me.
So it's interesting, Doug, because it sounds like it was sort of you were functioning on two levels at once. As a business professional earning a living, you were able to conduct yourself fairly effectively and develop strategies for clients and so on. But on a personal level, you were just really shutting down by the sounds of things.
Well, yeah, but they both cross over. It's like what I was not doing successfully was assembling all the different bits of work I was doing professionally.
Okay.
In business.
Right.
When I had a really narrow focus established by a relationship with someone else, a business relationship with someone else, I could do really, really well. But when it came to kind of stepping back from that and making it all come together, something was missing. And, I've done personal development. I've been to therapists, that kind of stuff. I dealt with a lot of things. The people at Daniel Amen's clinic had shown me some, it's really quite, frankly, it's a little bit creepy to look at a scan of your own brain.
I'll bet it is.
It's really quite creepy is a good word. And they showed me places where, clearly I'd had injuries.
Interesting.
But after about 3 years of using Amen's treatment, I realized that it wasn't getting to the root cause. and I was experiencing side effects from the drugs.
I was just going to say, when you because you talked about having gone to see other practitioners, both here in Canada and down in the States, and receiving diagnosis for this, that, and the other thing. As a consequence of being diagnosed with these conditions, Doug, were you given prescription drugs? Was that part of their approach to dealing with your disconnect?
Well, Swingle, no. He has a specific method he uses that in some cases was very effective, but was only mildly effective for me.
Okay.
What Eamon did was a combination of drugs, and he put me on a drug called Neurontin, and which is widely used off indication. And it didn't really have a good effect. It really quieted an enormous amount of noise in my brain. I mean, I was able to focus on what was happening much better.
Right.
And a friend of mine who recommended I go to see Philippe. Before I did that, several years before I actually went and saw Philippe, I was just 3 weeks onto Neurontin, and the people down in the clinic said, after about 3 weeks this will kick in. And on the 21st day, I walked into the office I shared with my friend. He said, "What happened?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You just looked at me for the first time as if I'm actually here."
Ah. Okay.
And I said,
as in making a connection kind of thing.
Yeah, right.
Right.
And I said, I'm just 21 days on this Neurontin stuff that Eamon gave me, and I guess it's working. And because you see, I had no idea. This is something that goes back to birth. I mean, I've lived my whole life with it. I had no idea that I was missing what I was missing and that I was doing what I was doing. It was reality.
That's fascinating. It really is.
I just had no way of I had no experiences that could give me a perspective. I couldn't step out of the box, and
right.
see what was going on.
So how did you manage to, when you started going to Neurokinetics, was that the first time, Doug, after seeing all of those other clinicians and practitioners, was your intake, your assessment phase, and then the treatments at Neurokinetics, did that allow you, perhaps for the first time, to completely understand what the heck was wrong with you?
No. The brain is a really mysterious place.
I believe that.
And I don't think we all, I got some indication. The really important thing about Philippe's method was the way that his way of diagnosing people was, it's about things like balance and how your eyes move and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It gets right to that place where the the way you think, the parts of your brain that do the thinking are really intimately interwoven with the parts of your brain that guide your eyes and govern your balance and the movement of your body.
So even from those initial 4-hour assessment that you'd had to do 3 of before you even began a treatment program, the doctor was able to already determine that there were certain things that you could identify, Philippe, what was going on. You were able to start putting 2 and 2 together just going through the assessment process.
Yes.
Interesting stuff. So,
sorry,
Doug.
Well, he could tell he had advice that you stuck in your shoes, and he had me stand on one of them, and as if they were in my shoes, and he could see an improvement immediately in how I was functioning, and VREs he calls them. And so that's how he knew he would be able to help me.
Interesting.
But for me, I didn't. All I knew was that something was disconnected. The thing about Philippe is he works with structures deep in the brain.
Right.
Swingle doesn't. Swingle works at the surface of your brain. And his stuff is valuable, but whatever was bugging me was deep in my brain.
Of course. Well, if it goes back to the day of your birth, it's kind of deep, about as deep as it gets, isn't it, Doug? So how long ago did this all take place? And the reason I'm asking you about a timeline, Doug, is because if it's been a while, do you go back for sort of tune-ups, if you will, an annual visit kind of thing, or are you still in active treatment?
Well, it was about 8 years ago.
Okay.
It has taken me really that entire period of time to integrate the changes that Philippe's treatment made. I found out in the wake of it that what he does is he causes certain neural circuits to start working that have shut down. And so you start having experiences you haven't had since the circuit shut down. And I hadn't had a lot of them. I mean, there were traumatic events during my life, but there were a lot of experiences I hadn't had at any point in my life.
Right.
And I had no context for that, no way to understand it. But I was just suddenly inundated with all kinds of signals, like social signals,
Oh, okay.
sensory signals, and literally the balance, physical balance. I mean, I was just overrun with just stuff that I either hadn't experienced for decades or had never experienced since the day of my birth.
Right. Right.
I had no idea. I mean, I didn't know who I was anymore.
But at least you were able to at least identify with knowledge that Dr. Philippe was able to supply to you. Here's what's wrong, and here if you're experiencing this waterfall of emotions and experiences, it's because this happened and that happened. So armed with information, at least, Doug, it must have been somewhat helpful as you were overwhelmed by all of these emotions, etc.
Well, I mean, I knew that I had a new brain, and in a sense, but I didn't have an operator's manual for it.
Right, right.
And so I spent the subsequent time doing things where it's actually learning to live with this was a completely different thing from having the procedure done.
Right.
And I didn't really. The only thing I really knew was that a whole lot of circuits had been reconnected, and a lot of them were in the corpus callosum, the communication between the two halves of my brain.
Right.
And that I had to learn how to use this thing, and a lot of what I was dealing with was signals from very early stages of my life. Right. I wound up getting involved with a couple of programs. The most important thing was getting involved with a long-term program involving other people in which we were trying to do something with our lives. So I was part of something run by an outfit called Warrior Sage that does personal development.
Ah, so there you were connecting with other people who were experiencing disconnect.
Basically, yeah. And maybe not for the reasons I was.
Right.
But the program was called The Gift of My Heroic Journey. It was about taking what has happened to you in your life and composing like a workshop and articles and stuff like that about it, and then making it, selling that to other people, making that available to people, because your journey is helpful to other people. So I was in that program for about a year and a half, and that was what enabled me to start putting things back together again. And then I had a long-term assignment with a really, really good client, and around the same time I got involved in a program run out of New York City called the Evolutionary Collective, and I was in that for 3 years.
Right.
Worked with the client for 3 years. So what it was being in situations that were being structured by someone else, in which everybody involved was learning like crazy.
Right.
That's all the problem.
But the energy that sort of got you going to seek out those programs and join up with other like-minded individuals and improve the quality of your life all came about because of the information and the initial experience with Dr. Philippe at Neurokinetics, correct?
Well, that's half of it. The other half is I already had a long history in personal development.
True.
A long history in my profession. And that's where the opportunities to do this other work came from. And that's where the awareness of what I should do about this came from.
All right.
And so combined with what Philippe really provided was a new, like he made me malleable. Most people, I'm 66 now, and that was in my late 50s. Most people in their late 50s, their brains are locked down the way they're locked down.
That's right.
And you can go through a lot of neurodevelopment late in life.
Right. You're never too old.
Yeah, I know. But what Philippe did, he kind of kicked the rock over the edge and started running downhill and accumulating more rocks. You know what I mean? And so he created a malleable state, and I was then able to mold it.
Excellent. Philippe, did you want to jump in here before we have to let Doug go?
Thank you, Doug, very much for sharing your experience, because what you say is exactly illustrating what we know now in state-of-the-art brain physiology with respect to neural plasticity and enhancing cognitive processing, which is the core engine and the processing, the software allowing neural plasticity, which now is well known out there. Thank you, Doug.
Doug, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us on the program today. It's really enlightening, and it's always encouraging to spend a few moments with someone who has benefited from neurokinetics and the crew down there. And it certainly sounds like you've managed to get your life back on track. Thanks so much for sharing it with us, Doug. We appreciate it very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you very much, Doug, again.
You're welcome.
We'll take a quick break and we'll find out exactly what happened there, what Dr. Philippe and the rest of the crew at Neurokinetics did to help Doug and other patients dealing with traumatic impact and disconnect issues when we return here on CIL 650's Boomer Life.
Canada's only weekly radio show dedicated to the baby boomer lifestyle. This is Boomer Life on CIL 650.